The ACN podcast is made possible thanks to the generosity of our listeners and sponsors, including the Agile Alliance. As a nonprofit membership organization, the Agile Alliance is an excellent resource to help you along your Agile journey. To learn more about the Agile Alliance and our other sponsors, as well as how you can become a sponsor or supporter of our show, please visit acnpodcast.org for more information. And thank you for your support. Hello and welcome to the Agile Coaching Network. My name's Ray Irell. I'm with the Agile Alliance. Agile Alliance is a nonprofit organization helping people with their Agile adoptions. They've been doing it since about 2001. This particular call is put on in order to help you, as well as others, be able to be successful with their Agile adoptions. This is episode 20. Quite excited. We've been doing this for about 2 years now. Let's go ahead and dive into the first question. What are some of the strategies and tactics for engaging upper and executive management for adopting business agility, more so than Agile project delivery methods? And Hendrik, why don't you get us started?
One of those golden questions that come up quite a number of times. The problem is that there is not this one simple answer to this. I think there's a lot of experience exchange on how different people have tried this in their companies. I myself was lucky that I had executive management around me when we wanted to do a shift. What I like with this particular question now is that it's really talking about business agility and not only about agile product delivery. And I think this is an angle that we haven't discussed so much in this forum so far. So I'm just myself at the moment in exactly this situation that engaging upper management in relation to business agility. And I think what's important, first of all, is that it's clear that business agility is a bit more than or should not be confused with agility in product development that we have been discussing for many, many years. So I think important is when you start addressing these things that you speak the language of the executives, and business agility is already a term that is maybe more appealing to executives.
Do we have a definition of business agility? I mean, I hear the words being said a lot. There's actually conferences now that are focused on it. I made an attempt to go author something, and there's been some other things out there. But do we have a really firm definition of what it means or what it means to you?
Well, business agility, some people think it's enterprise agility, which means what does agility mean in an HR or in a finance department or in a marketing and sales department? I would say, yes, enterprise agility is part of this, but business agility is looking at the question, how can we, in a much more agile way, respond to the challenges that we have in making business? So trends in innovation, how do we live with encountering disruption and so on? And in that sense, this is much more looking into the question on how do we not only market and sell, but also how do we innovate and how do we innovate in parallel to the legacy products that we have and so on. So that's more for me what's vision. Yeah.
So this is where we're going from from identifying an opportunity, taking it all the way to a solution, and then after a solution, how do we sunset it? So your view is that it's that value stream throughout the life cycle of anything we produce. Is that true? Did I summarize that right?
Yeah, I think the challenge that most companies have is that you try to innovate in parallel to an existing product. And this is always, you have the innovator's dilemma, first of all. So your existing portfolio is maybe challenged by new incumbents who can do this maybe in a better or simpler way. Plus, you might have new ideas, but those new ideas are not getting accepted because it falls between the chairs in your organization, because your organization has maybe a product management for product X and a product management for product Y. But if you have a new idea for product Z, then the budget needs to come from X and Y. And then the thing falls between the chairs. So I think that is a big issue for many companies. And that's for me a bit the core of what business agility is looking into. How can we make these kind of things happen?
Okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what was your definition? You said you have made an attempt. So what did you come up with?
Yeah, well, when I started it was kind of weird because I don't know how you do your research, but typically I go to the gods of Google and type in business agility and see what comes up. And what I found is that there was a lot of what I would consider to be kind of DevOpsy type of things, which is more talking about activities of things versus how outcomes. What are we trying to go create with business? And so the definition that I came up with was more towards how do we get from an opportunity, one discovery of opportunities within business, and then how does it survive, and how does it live through the life cycle?
But I mean, the question was, what are some strategies and tactics for engaging upper executive management? So when we now say what this is roughly what business agility is, what are then tactics to address this with executive management? Maybe we should discuss that as well.
Yeah, I extremely agree with both of you. There's one aspect, and I've been saying that on several occasions, is make sure you understand that even executive management are people. So if you find their personal interest, frame of mind, or major pain point, talk about this one and address it. Most of the time, there will be something fitting to your proposal that is a problem for them. And if you solve their problem, that's the easiest way in, because it's the most productive for them anyway. And
now you said something interesting that they're people,
yes.
Which I think sometimes we forget that they've got their woes and their things that they're dealing with, and all the activities of their job. How do you relate to them from a people perspective? Do you think that we set executive management at too high of a pedestal where we don't feel we can interact with them?
I think so, that this is a quite common reaction, but sometimes it's much easier taking things down to an example that relates to family issues or something that even maybe matches to a problem they might be experiencing with their kids. So giving them an alternative platform from that multi-million company to try something and learn without being embarrassed in front of everybody is sometimes a good chance.
Oh, okay. Well, one other thing to kind of add to that is, and again, I was the benefit of working at Intel Corporation when Andy Grove was managing the company, and he always had this philosophy that you can have a one-on-one with anybody. So if you wanted to have a one-on-one with Andy Grove, or you wanted to have a one-on-one with an executive leader, we at least had a cultural component that was there that you could have that meeting. And it could be, you could say, hey, I would like 30 minutes of your time, and they would give it. And so I think it's sort of reciprocal, which is executives need to make themselves also approachable.
And I think there is one important thing, and that's also my experience. Generally, of course, you should have respect for people, but you should not be afraid of people who have a high management position. And my experience is, if you reach out to them, just send them an email or call them, you address them with a valid thing, a problem that concerns them, then they are very open and listening. So I usually have no problem to connect to them. But of course, you need to, like you, Jörg, said, you need to address a thing that bothers them.
Yeah, I actually agree that approaching them often is easier than many people think, but there's still, let's say, a cultural thing for many people. And one component there actually is, if you approach them, and if this is possible, make sure they understand this is already the first step towards business agility. Because if you're not aware of what opportunities, challenges your company has, you can't even try to improve them. So having the opportunity to be addressed with something meaningful is so valuable for people on top that actually sometimes it's good to say thank you for your 10 minutes, 15 minutes time. Actually, again, one of the things I like to say, saying thank you as often as meaningful is a really good thing. And don't forget to do it for your manager as well.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we actually gave somebody a self-promotion to Chief Happiness Officer. There was a gentleman by the name of Alan. His last name was Gladman, perfect name for a chief happiness officer. And he would always tell people, like, happy Friday, and just start, hey, thank you for that. And he was really good about how do we extend out to people who we normally don't send thank yous to. How do we do that more effectively? So you can promote yourself to chief happiness officer tomorrow, and you can improve that. Let me kind of approach this slightly different from a tactic and a strategy, and back to the definition real quick. It sounds like we've been talking about mostly about the speed of communications versus product delivery. Is business agility more about communication strategies than it is about product delivery strategies?
I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with communication alone. To me, it's as well focus on doing the right things and doing them consciously, because for me, there's as well the perspective of sustainability. So it's not about a one-off cycle of inventing the next great product. It's making sure the next cycle will happen as well. That's part of the business agility, always setting the stage for the next thing.
So I'm thinking when you talk about business agility opposed to product development, I really think it's about change management, right? Which is also a part of communication, because we can speak, but if the information is not penetrating enough to be able to make the change for agility inside of the business sector, then I really don't think we have, anything on communication itself. Does that make sense?
A big part of change management is asking questions. I mean, questions make people think. So especially when you address executives, the question is, what is a good question that makes them think?
So yeah. I do agree. So I guess, I don't know if it's value added communication or it is communication, but I guess it has to be in a way that it is impactful, right? In order to get the change that we need.
And how do you guys measure that? The message was received and we're getting that impact.
So I measure it on a level of success if I come to management about a change and I can show the benefit and I have their buy-in. That is how I'm measuring it now. I'm not measuring it from a quantitative standpoint. At that point, it will be definitely qualitative.
I would fully agree to that one. You look into their eyes and then you see whether you got them with something, they are chewing on it and they are buying into it or not. You see whether they take action on it. That's, of course, also then an indicator.
How are we doing with this question? Are we wanting to pivot, or are we want to continue going down this road?
Yeah, let's move on to the next one, maybe.
Okay. I'm fully willing to get through as many questions as we can in an hour. So the next question is, in an agile transformation, how can you bring more value to line managers that might be willing to change but have not yet seen or understand the full implications, and I assume, of agile transformations? Jörg, what do you have for this?
Yeah, maybe looking at that from the fact that I've been a first line manager a lot of my professional life. So one value that you can really bring if people are stuck in that delivery situation, and you had that quite right, Ray. First line managers are often susceptible to the problem, but very often focus totally on getting the thing out the door and reacting fast to problems. So if you want to bring more value, help them to live the learning as well as part of it as early as possible, because very often they are in a situation where they forget these retrospectives and they just want to move on and go to the next sprint if they're doing Scrum, and make them recognize that, it's a good step, but they will not be able to take the next one if they don't breathe through, and make them understand that sprint is not about being as fast as possible, but being sustainable, because otherwise there's that disappointment waiting down the line, where people say agile is not so nice. And then there's that other type I've seen who think they get it, but they still can't let go. So if they want benefit from Agile more than they maybe already have that first 20%, teach them how to let go. And best you can do this by extending trust to them, because most often they are not used to being trusted.
Now, from an implication perspective, do you think though the notion that as a first line, your job is going to change? You're now going to have a self-organized team. That self-organization means you become more of a coach to your team than you actually become a manager of the team.
Yep, that's definitely a very important part. And one thing that helps as well is giving positive feedback. If you're a team member and you're really feeling that something is changing, tell your first line manager that you're observing this positive impact, because that's one thing he might not get in the rush of things. Then there's something he can build on.
Brian, do you have something to add to this?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I have found that if you spin up frontline managers or functional managers in the context of their role within an agile transformation, just like you spin up scrum masters or product owners or team members, give them some sense of what the change means to them on a tactical and strategic basis, then it gives them the initial footing to see the shift that you're describing, moving from a more push model to a more pull model. And if you do that effectively and give them at least that initial insight into their new role, it serves to just bring them along more quickly.
And what technique do you normally do in order to bring that out?
I got to the point where I needed some presentation level material to do that, so that I could just do a quick, I could use it in a one-on-one, I could do it in a intact training session, I could do it as a lunch and learn, but it was an amalgamation of all the stuff that I had run into in my engagements as a freelancer, working with you, Ray, back in the day, things I gleaned from industry sources, articles, videos, all that stuff. I just kind of collected it all up and put it into a relatively short presentation that I could deliver to somebody.
Okay. What I've learned is that the whole process of change and I was thinking that in general, because the culture that we were when we worked together, it was very much an expert-based culture. And when somebody is suddenly challenged with, you're not the expert at what we're adopting, that was always difficult for them, because they were now put in a position of, I'm not the expert in the room. And I think we needed to soften a little bit of, that we're all learning together. And I guess as an Agile coach, one of the things that I would always have to dial back is, that, don't try to over position yourself, I guess is a lack of a better word. Do you find that, by the way, does anyone find that sometimes Agile coaches just come in and they're just intimidating?
Have seen that.
And that intimidation shuts down, I think, a lot of, first line managers. And I'll pull back the story in the early days when someone came in and first taught us Scrum, and that guy was up there telling us that the first line managers were no longer needed, and that they're out of work, and it totally shut every manager down in the room.
I was just going to say, I think the coach needs to be the role model for servant leadership. The coach
exactly.
should be the one that people point to and say, man, that guy or that gal really serves well.
And so, yeah, I hear you on that. But what would be the way that you would then, for yourself, because as a coach, how would you walk away from the situation saying that I did it? That worked out well. I didn't put people on the defensive and they got it.
I know that they got it when they engage me with questions.
Okay.
So if I have made the space safe so that when we talk about the material, and I deliver it in such a way that they feel safe to say, man, this is really hard, or you're crazy, this stuff is never going to work, or, oh, that sounds really interesting. When I'm engaged that way, then I know that I've done my job to put them at ease and give them a space to respond to and interact with the ideas.
I think when we talk about how you do it, I mean, I think you probably do this with any role that you're taking through an agile transformation, but you want to bring them along for a journey, and I think you want to set that expectation that you start in you start in the areas where traditional development and agile have common ground. You draw those connections, and then you show the current state, and then what's the rough part going to look like, and then what does good look like, and then you have to reinforce, like anything else, like you have to reinforce those good behaviors, and you have to make sure that you're setting that picture that we're driving to a goal, and this is your role in that part of this is your role in that goal as we drive down. I mean, you don't want to do that with anybody, but I think for the managers especially, because there's a lot of expertise there that they're not having to fully change, but they are changing a lot.
Right. And it's extreme. I've seen where they've actually started to understand, well, what else in the organization that I can spend my attention and time on, because the team's got it, and it takes them a while to get there. But I think there's sort of a two-way street in this too, because their management, who they report to, sometimes gets confused about the role shift as well, which is we had a culture where the manager was accountable for the delivery not coming in, versus the team's the one who didn't, get all the work done. My job is to keep people informed and remove roadblocks and obstacles in front of the teams. And I think that having to then give the first line person or the line manager their talking points that they can effectively communicate how their job is shifted to their management also is important as well.
Another thing that I've seen works extremely well is when you reach out to other companies that have maybe advanced a bit more in the journey, and you arrange a meeting of these managers that maybe have a couple of steps ahead, and let them talk to each other, because then they can exchange a bit what was the learning on their side, how did it feel, and so on. So go and see is a very good method as well, I think.
Yeah, one of the conversations I have with all levels of management is the concept of chaotic leadership. To manage up first, and then your peers, and then yourself first, and then up on your chain, and then your peers, and then very little time to manage down. That once they start exhibiting that, once they actually say no to their management, that's when, or no, or push back, or ask questions why this is the direction. That's where I say, okay, my job is done.
Sure. I'm curious, chaotic leadership. Is there some place I can go read more about that?
Google, just Gods of Google will get you
the
there.
Gods of Google, yes.
Let me quickly search and give you.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I can definitely go off and do that. Well, problem is that I've been studying like Cynefin and other types of complexity theory, and so I think of chaotic leadership as being decisions. People taking fast decisions, because I immediately threw me into that chaotic portion of the Cynefin diagram, and Is that what you're referring
chaotic, to? It's D as in, so it's not T in the word, it's D as in doll. Okay. Chaotic, not...
Chaotic, not chaotic.
Chaotic,
yeah. No, I get it.
I'm sorry about my accent.
Chaotic.
But,
yeah.
No problem. My accent gets in the way all the time.
Maybe you can explain briefly what that is, because I have not come across that thing.
As I said, so there are 4 aspects of leadership or management. Self. One is self, owning your own development, owning what kind of leader you want to be, and driving that. we all want to do that, I hope. And it starts with awareness and making change and all of that. And then the second, and that's happening 25 and more % of the time. So you spend a lot of percentage in managing yourself, or leading to be the leader you want. And then the next level of percentage is managing up, or leading your leaders to be the leaders that you want them to be. Developing them and leading them, and that also includes how to influence the decision making and be part of that transformation process, not just being told, but contribute to that. And then the third aspect of it is managing your peers or leading your peers. So it has to be, again, be the lead that everybody wants to follow, even at your peer levels, which, how to manage, how do I do this stuff versus what impact it has been for the people who are trying to imbibe this, right? So those kind of conversations at the peer level, and then 5%, even 5%, and nothing more than that, I hope, but managing down or leading down. It's being there for your team and not telling them. I come across a definition of empowerment. Empowerment is not delegating tasks, but delegating the authority to make decisions, right? So so I often use that and say, when we talk about empowerment, you want to bring in engagement, and you cannot empower without engagement, and all of those things. So that's what I use for the leaders that I coach.
Yeah, it's kind of very similar to what I I don't definitely call it this, but synergistic leadership styles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tends to be where I want people to be able to enlist different people in the organization, and versus again, from the expert culture that I came from, we tended to lead more from an expert culture perspective, and that got in the way of a lot of different things. And so helping
more
people
directive.
Right. And synergistic to me also is about facilitation of self-organization at any level that you work with, know, and I find myself at every conversation that I walk into with no matter what group of people, that first discussion is always, how are we going to make decisions? How are we going to work together?
Absolutely.
What is my role in this meeting? What is your role in this meeting? And getting all that stuff taken care of in the first 15 minutes of the meeting. And I guess it's just been, I've done it for so long that it's just a habit, and no one ever stops you from doing it. They all actually thank you for it.
Yeah, it's more logical, right? You understand your boundaries, you understand where you can push the edge, and then a new way of thinking emerges from that. I've been reading this, Facilitated to Lead. So it's about facilitating all your conversations. It's not about leading them and allowing the room to lead itself, but you are the facilitator, leader being the facilitator of any conversation, any decision-making process. So good. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
No problem. You can speak at any time.
This was interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, one other thing to add to this is that in order to help managers through the transformation, we actually had to set up a leadership course, and that leadership course was our way of helping them to understand it from the other perspective, not as the product delivery person, but now as a manager, how do I act and how do I behave, and what are some of the things that I need to grow as an individual. And the best person to teach that, by the way, is a former a transformed manager.
It's interesting. I pitched that idea yesterday, and I was asked, how are we going to fund this program? Like, that's your problem. I just pitched your story. So it's very interesting that how they're okay doing it by themselves, but when you talk about the whole organization, then the dollars matter a lot. And
I get to, and if you can get enough, sort of the self-funding of instructors, meaning, can I get enough train the trainer programs going within the organization so that it isn't a big external consultants pool in order to come in and teach. The only problem is consistency. and
Yeah.
the consistency of the delivery sometimes becomes hard. And I can tell you, as an agile coach working at a Fortune 100 company, 162 sites worldwide, I could tell you that I ended up, taking a lot of that out of my own body because I visited all those sites. So you got to be real careful of burnout.
But then the question is always, what do you want to be consistent on? I think you can overdo this quite quickly.
So the follow-up, so consistency is in my head, across whenever you speak, whenever you behave, whatever you do, all your actions. So that's in my head is consistency. But I, as an individual or as a trainer or a coach, I see myself evolving, taking on new ideas, taking on different ways to think. How does one in that path or journey maintain consistency when in teaching or training or coaching? Do you see what I'm trying to say?
I see exactly what you're saying.
Exactly the thing. That's the thing. What to be a consistent on, because consistency means on what do you want to achieve and what are the principles of things, and then of course you learn more and more about how to make these principles come alive and these basic things come alive and so on. And this how dimension, you learn so much, and there I don't think that you need to be absolutely consistent, because I'm happy actually when some colleagues have advanced more than me, because then I can learn from them, or if they have not advanced as much as I have, they can learn from me. So it's impossible to be 100% consistent, I think.
Yeah. No, I get it. Thank you.
One other thing to add to that, though, is I had an experience where it took a year to get around the company. And so I came back a year later to this one site, and they were doing something, and I had grown myself over that year. And I had to ask them, I said, well, who taught you that? Why are you doing that? And they said, well, you taught us that a year ago. And I'm like, well, you shouldn't do that anymore. That was wrong.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah, I've been there, done that.
Yeah, it's always funny with that. Do we want to pivot to another question, by the way?
Yeah, let's move on. I think maybe get one more done today.
Okay, that sounds good. So the next question that's coming up is, and this is always one that's hard to do, which is how, as an Agile coach, how do they know that he or she has done a good job?
Maybe making the connection to the last discussion, I think Brian said that as soon as they ask questions and are open, I know that they understand. And I think that's exactly one thing that applies here. And you can take it one step further. Actually, if next day they come back and say, you made me think, then you damn sure you made a good job, because that's one of the most important results you can get.
I think there's a corollary to that too. And if you see somebody you've taught teaching somebody else, or the results of your teaching through them, through that next generation of people, then you know that you've succeeded, because they're now extending it out beyond themselves, beyond you.
Now, is it, from a question of quantity and quality? And I don't know if this question is, how do I rate myself versus other Agile coaches, or just how do I know that? Because I guess what I'm getting to is, I never get through to everybody. As a coach, there's certain people that just don't get it. And am I a bad coach because maybe 10% of the organization didn't get it?
Well, I think yes. No, actually,
I knew it.
I know. Sorry to say that. No, but I have the same. Can I learn from that? Because I always think this must be about me. Somehow I didn't manage to reach out to that person and express myself in such a way that I help this person grow, or teach me that I'm totally wrong in something. That could also be the other way around. It always makes me think.
Actually, I think you only fail in this if nobody else of the 90% getting through to those people, because it's just sometimes the fact that other people can talk to somebody where you can't. That happens everywhere in life, but if nobody is taking this up and trying to bring everybody together, then maybe there's the problem. I don't think you have to do it all on your own. Rely on the people you are teaching to do some of the work.
And that's, by the way, another good technique, maybe, when you can help, when you can activate other people helping you to rephrase something, maybe, so another person can understand it better.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I know I've done a good job if I've replaced myself.
Ooh,
So,
interesting.
Yes.
If I'm no longer needed, then I have
if people
certainly
start to explain this to themselves, to each other,
right. Yeah, I've
And
worked
after my
myself out
last
of a job.
after my last 2 years, man, check, done.
That's actually something that is true for a lot of things managers do as well. If your teams don't need you to do this anymore, don't feel like you've lost something. Feel like you can do something new.
Yes.
And it's the same for coaches.
It gets back to, you got to be like the Incredible Hulk. It's just like, okay, this town's clean. I can move on. Grab your bag, backpack, put the theme song on, go off into the sunset.
So I noticed that early on, one of the indicators that I'm starting to have an impact to a team is, let me make sure I say this clearly, like the conversations about Agile become less frequent. It's the conversation is switch from what is Agile and that to more of the work or more of continuous improvement.
So it's more institutionalized, and you hear that the conversation shifted. Yeah, I use that as well. How about others? How about more of the numerical data? Velocity stabilizes. Is that something the coach did, or is that something the team did? And should I feel good about it?
Also be because your build environment is becoming stable or something like this. I'm not sure. I think velocity is. I would never use that as an indicator.
We should get rid of velocity. I hear that every single time.
Wait, you mean you haven't already?
Oh, I have. I throw it out there as a provocative thing to get people arguing. Because there tends to be one person on the call that tends to love velocity.
Well, it's one feedback indicator to a team, but it's not so that a team has to use it. I think they can use other things as long as they are continuously learning and they are taking care of feedback. It's okay for me.
Velocity is a double-edged sword. One side gets used by the team well to plan. The other side gets used by the managers to slice up the team and harp on them and do some command control.
Oh, that's why I would never share velocity with management at all.
It's exactly. It owned by the team.
This is the team measurement. This isn't your measurement. Can I have access to it? No, you can't. Sorry.
Yeah. Boy, good luck with that around here.
Well, yeah, that's how it works. Sometimes people, when they get certain data that, and this is true with any data, it's not just with Agile, it also happens in Waterfall. I remember one time I was doing some work with this other team, and they said, you guys have improved so well. And they brought out these metrics that apparently they've been tracking the performance of our team for the last year. And they were noting that we were getting better. And I said, well, why were you tracking these things in the first place? He says, because we were going to go to management and tell how awful you guys were. But then you guys got better. They're all political, it's political jerks, Anyway, so let me also reframe this as well. Is what if somebody tells you you're not doing a good job? What do you do? How do you approach that?
I ask, why do you think that? What is it you are missing? Because I want to understand his frame of mind. So what's his worldview? One might be that he's actually expecting me to make the team deliver faster, and that maybe on day one. So then I have to reset that expectation. Anyway.
So I think the first step there is thank them, because usually if
you're right.
Somebody's in that mind frame, they're usually not telling you.
Mm-hmm. I had somebody yell at me because they asked for my opinion one time. How do you think I'm doing? And I told them, and they yelled at me.
You didn't say anything they wanted to hear.
Well, but they asked. I mean,
They didn't want to hear that.
Oh, so I said the wrong thing. I should have tempered my response.
It's going to become one of those like Murphy's laws of agile coaching. Don't ask the agile coach what they think unless you really want to know.
That's exactly right. So it's like, I know that individual to this day, and I will never answer that question again. Because it's like you've ruined it. And so if you're going to ask for somebody's feedback, you got to fold your hands underneath the table, do whatever it takes to stay calm and collective, and go cry in your car going home or yell in the car going home, but don't do it in front of that individual. So you have to learn how to.
Or go to an Agile conference and have a group therapy with the other coaches.
Wait, we're not in group therapy now?
What's Hi, my name's Ray. Hi, Ray. Well, yeah, we should have the Bad Agile Coaching Network. We can start that one up. After I beat up the team, yeah, told them they weren't doing their job right.
Maybe do a special episode next time.
So have we exhausted this question? Do we want to actually try to go pull in one more? Or does anyone want to add another way of measuring whether or not you're a good Agile coach? I'm going to pivot then. Yeah. We have about 10 minutes left. I think we can get through this next one. It's one of these little small ones, which is how can a coach help the business head, or a product manager on budget allocation? And I'll go ahead and start this off. Just give me the budget as the Agile coach, and I'll handle it from here. So, do you think that'll work?
No.
Oh, okay. I actually told somebody one time that I'd take care of their budget for them if they, because they were busy, and they didn't let me. So, how can we help them with budget allocation?
Start with prioritization.
Yeah, I was going to say prioritization and involving the team, giving them that this is what they want to do, and first going with the scope of what they're trying to do, why they're trying to do it, and then involving the team to say what about that can be done in the time that they want to achieve it. I don't see it as any different from how a PO interacts with the team when priorities change. Even if it is a manager trying to bring in new initiatives and things like that, it's like going to the team because they are the experts. How many FTEs do we need? 6 months, what's the risk time, right? I definitely, as a coach, do not want to manage those dollars because I think that's a more headache. I would want to manage the people and the process aspect of it, and not necessarily the dollars around it. But that's my
okay. I used to actually just bring out that a 2-week sprint, cost $40,000. And the question would be, are we getting enough business value for the $40,000 we're about to spend? And just kind of framing it in, is it worth spending this money? And I don't know if that gets to the budget allocation portion of it, because I think that we've already said we're doing the product. It's just from an expense perspective, how do we control expenses by coming under budget?
I mean, this is also very much about how to do budget allocation in an agile way, right? So give them the Beyond the Boxness Beyond Budgeting book. Maybe that is maybe one thing you can do. But I think also understanding a bit the dynamics and the decision structures around budget is another question for me. Yeah. I mean, is the bank only open once a year, or do you give the budget step by step to the organization? You need to think through, at least that's what we did when we did our agile transformation. How do we actually manage budget allocation in general?
Okay, so you were a little bit more advanced than most, because some are suffering from that their finance or their business just operates in their old manner. They don't use beyond budgeting or any other new techniques. It's so I think that's an impediment that comes up, that if budget is an impediment for some reason within the organization, I think that's when the coach gets involved with it and says, look, the way we budget around this place affects us. It affects our ability to deliver value to our customer, and then frame it into that perspective. And then it now becomes something that's valid for you to work on.
I do think there's a good conversation there with that we're going to stop when we hit the value that we're trying to hit. We're not going to continue to build everything we thought was going to hit that value. We're going to do small deliverables, and we're going to do those things that help us test that value. And we can stop when we hit the value, not when we complete the scope.
That's very good. Do you think that leadership, like in your organization, gets that?
I think the way that my organization does their allocations, the conversation can happen and be okay, but it's tough because there is still some of that, if you don't spend it, you don't get it next year mentality. So that can certainly pose some challenges.
Yeah, that I think needs to just get out of, the way businesses are ran, because I couldn't even give, let's say if another manager needed some money to finish a project, and I said, well, I reduced my scope because there's no value there for what we were doing, and I gave them, $20,000 to go do some other feature. Then we get into the budget cycle, and they said, well, you get $20,000 less because you gave it over to another organization. Those types of games need to stop, and if I should be rewarded for not spending all my money. Anyway,
I think that goes back to the business agility that we were talking about earlier. Is that mentality shift is, I think, going to be a game changer in probably every business.
Yes, I fully agree with that. Well, we are at the top of the hour, guys and gals. I'm glad we had a second phone call for this month. We're getting hopefully back to more of a normal cadence, but there's a couple of events that are coming up in the future. Big Agile event happening in San Diego. We're going to try to get some sort of, if you're a member of the Agile Coaching Network, some sort of, thing that we can do together there. And we've got a whole week of activities, of course, with the conference that are going on, and we'd love to have you there. Maybe even doing a live version of the Agile Coaching Network while we are there, which would be really cool. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation today. Hopefully, now you are going to get a survey at the end of this call. I haven't done surveys before in the past. Let us know how we can improve the Agile Coaching Network. This is our community, and I would very much want to keep the conversation going. Thank you all. This podcast is provided by the Agile Alliance for educational and informative purposes only. To find out more information about the member-supported Agile Alliance, please go to agilealliance.org to find out about more upcoming events, as well as different programs that are available to help you with your Agile journey.